and welcome back to Engineering ADHD. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below to ensure that you stay up to date with all the content that we produce here on Engineering ADHD. Now, this is the first of the weekly series of videos where I want to talk about things that I've experienced as somebody with ADHD working in a high-stress, high-paced field such as engineering. As the title of this video indicates, RSD, or Rejection Sensitivity Disorder, which is in my opinion, part of emotional dysregulation that comes very much with ADHD, had a big impact on my life this week. Now, what RSD does and what emotional dysregulation will do, when you experience something that is a minor setback, when you experience something that is a minor piece of rejection, that is something that a normal person would just take in stride and just kind of move on from. For people with ADHD, that can feel like you killed a kitten. To give an example, if my wife mentions that I got something slightly wrong, I bought the wrong particular type of produce or food when I went grocery shopping, it doesn't matter how good I've done at everything else, all of a sudden my brain tells me that I'm a bad husband, and it goes to a very dark place if you let it. I find that knowing that this is part of what's going on in my brain often helps me understand that, wait a minute, let's pause, let's take a step back, and let's think about what really just happened. And is the rejection that I'm feeling, is the negative emotions that I'm having me, or is it my ADHD? Now, as we go on the channel, you're going to hear me pose that question a lot. And to me, that is something that if you're going to live with ADHD, it's a question you're going to have to ask yourself a lot. I know that for some of us, giving that moment between what just happened in our reaction is very difficult. The executive part of our brain that's supposed to give us that is dysfunctional in most cases. Now, I'm speaking in general terms. Obviously, ADHD has a different effect on a lot of people. There were a couple of times this week where I had some small losses. Some things didn't go my way, some things didn't work out, I forgot to make callbacks, I forgot to get back in touch with people and link back up. And my boss was rightfully pointing those out and rightfully saying, hey, we need to get focused and we need to get back. Now, at the same time, I was trying to focus on bigger wins. We have a critical system that is moving from one domain to another over the weekend coming up, and I wanted to make sure that we were ready for this. So for the last week and a half, I've been kind of focusing on that, not focusing so much on some of my support roles, and that's whatever. That's the way that works. And he didn't mean it as, hey, you're failing. He didn't mean it like, hey, you need to be better at your job. No, he just meant it as in, this fell through the cracks, let's pick it back up and let's move on. My brain took it completely differently. And there were some times where my reaction was not what it should have been. I reacted with feeling much more stressed out, getting angry in a situation where I shouldn't be angry. Now, the good news is some of the cognitive behavioral therapies that I've used and some of the training that I've given myself over the years allowed me to quickly come back. So, with these experiences, with the experiences of having the small losses while having massive wins over the same period of time, and understanding that the choices in how I was dealing with things, I think overall I did all right. I think I could do better with dealing with the first initial response, but I think overall I did all right. I think the first thing that I did when I got the email saying, hey, you missed the callback, right? Here's a list of the cases that are not in a good standard because you've been focusing on B over here. And I immediately started to have the anxiety and have what are the ramifications, what are the repercussions, and completely, my brain went in a very wrong direction that was not what the people around me were really thinking. So my first reaction was I went for a vape. It's that simple. By going for a vape, I gave myself some time. Go have a coffee, go drink a water, go have a cigarette, whatever you can do to give yourself that time. That is the way that I dealt with this. And I was able to reset. And I was able to come back, and I was able to realize that the reaction was ADHD, it wasn't me, right? So it was improperly scaled, and it wasn't how I wanted to deal with that. So from that moment forward, I could refocus, I could reprioritize, I could get in touch with the customers that I needed to get in touch with, I could get back on track with the cases that had gone sideways while not losing traction on the major project that I was working on. I think one of the benefits to my job is my ability to multitask, right? I get tasks from so many different directions at work that if I'm not making mental headway on one, I can usually switch. There are some that are time sensitive that it doesn't matter, I have to focus through. And there will be videos, obviously, on dealing with that. But I think one of the things that I personally value a lot is the techniques that I have come up with and that I have discovered to give myself that time. And I think this is something that if you have ADHD, whether you're medicated or not, right, you really need to come up with a way to give yourself that moment. I know that it's difficult. It's not easy. You want to react immediately because you feel like you don't have time, and that's part of the impulsivity of ADHD. But you need to turn around and understand that the time is there. Nobody needs an immediate response to anything. A couple of seconds isn't going to make a big deal unless you are like a medical first responder or a soldier. Lives are not on the line for a couple of seconds. So just being able to go to not respond, not react, and think for a second and come up with and ask yourself the question that I posed. Is this reaction me or is this reaction ADHD? That's a big one. And I think a lot of things went well. I think that I could have dealt with it better in that I could have understood from the beginning that this was possible. Understood that my focusing on one aspect of my job was going to leave others behind, and that sooner or later that would have to be dealt with. And I could have also realized ahead of time that because I knew I was going to get in this situation, that my boss was going to be the one that was going to pull me back. I think if I had done that, and I think if I had given myself that foreknowledge, I never would have had the RSD reaction to that email. So that's going to be my takeaway from this week for sure, is to try to predict where things, small things, little pieces of negativity, little pieces of setbacks, little losses are going to come from, and hopefully stop the entire process of the RSD, or at least that side of the emotional dysregulation, weird word, I know, from becoming an issue in the first place. I am, however, going to take the coping mechanism that I have used forever, which is to walk away, right? Nothing in my life requires a response within 2 or 3 seconds. I'm not functioning as a medical first responder, right? Nobody's life is on the line. I'm not in a military engagement situation, so nothing needs that second or 2 response. Nobody is going to think less of me if I walk away and I take a couple minutes to go have a vape and think about what is going on and then present my reaction. In fact, I think given the choice of having the reaction that I had a chance to think about versus having that instantaneous response, which, because I'm male, usually is aggression and it usually is anger, I don't think that that's the right response in many situations. There are a couple where, okay, aggression and anger might be the right response, and that might be a time that you need to work with that, but I can't think in my life where I have had a situation where the immediate response of aggression and anger and escalating the situation was ever the right choice. So yeah, bear with me while I learn how to do these videos. If RSD or rejection sensitivity disorder or aggression or the delay between perception and response is something that has plagued you, comments down below. If you have other strategies for dealing with this that other people who watch this channel might find very useful, by all means, comments down below. I love the discussions. I love talking to people. If you don't want to talk in a public forum, there will be an email address at the end of this video. Right? Feel free to use it. I will try to respond as quickly as I can. I will read every message. I don't know if I get the chance to respond to everyone. Hopefully I do. But go ahead and use that email address to send private questions to me if it's something that you don't want to talk about in public. So yeah, my takeaway from this week is I apparently have a new subscriber in my other channel, Mikey's Lab. RSD is a very real thing. It's a very serious thing for people who have ADHD. So I want to thank you for joining me on Engineering ADHD. I hope you learned something. And remember, there will always be someone who doesn't see the unique gifts of your brain. Don't let that person be you.